Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello. Regarding quarterbacks, which I'm sure will be a hot topic today, how do you plan on separating out the reps, separating out the competition, and what pace would you like to see this go in?
Spent a lot of time. We always spend a lot of time scripting these early practices. Not only how the practice format will go, but for me, I always work hard to get just the right rep for just the right quarterback, making sure everyone gets the not equal opportunities, but everyone gets opportunities at all the different concepts. Sometimes when you're scripting ahead, you're guessing how well a guy will handle it, because as you go through a couple practices, you watch the film, the video after practice, you say, hey, I got to get David another rep at this, or Michael needs another rep. And so you don't always know how they're going to perform going in, but I spend a lot of time in every year trying to figure that out. And so last year we had a different issue, trying to make it more even for guys who were competing to be the starter, and then now just with different guys, it's a different issue. There are a lot of unknowns when it comes to a player that I've never seen throw in person. You know, I've seen video of Philip throw, but I've never seen him throw in person. And coaching in the NFL, I learned a long time ago that it's critical to see a guy throw in person to evaluate him. Just how does that ball come out of his hand? And so there are a lot of unknowns in that area. There are a lot of things I know now much better than I have for the 2 other years that I've sat before you. I mean, that's what would be with Michael and David, not only in the game reps that they've had, but then going through the spring with them and just learning them as what kind of people they are, what kind of learners they are. I think after you work with a guy for so long, just like in any area, you have a student and you can interact with them, a phone call, you can get so much out of their feedback. And so I feel very confident. I have great faith in the kind of summer that those 2 guys had, just based on knowing them. And so there's so much more that I know this year. Of course, all the questions are about the one thing I don't know. But I've spent a lot of time so far, grueling time, trying to get the reps just right. But then I just have to leave it open after a certain amount, because then as we evaluate where they are, we'll just proceed in that direction. I remember sitting here last year saying, well, we'll just let it play out on the field. It's easy to say that. Sometimes it's hard. I think I believed when we got to the first scrimmage last year is when I felt very clear that David Watford should be in the mix as a true freshman, based on watching him out on the field without a coach being on the field and how he handled himself. He was only about, if I remember correctly, I think he was only about 50% completion in that scrimmage. So it wasn't that he just went lights out. It was more the way he carried himself. I felt like he saw the field. I felt like the speed of the game he was up to the speed of the game in his first real scrimmage. And I said, okay, he's got to be in the mix. And so it could be that the same thing happens at that first scrimmage. We can make a delineation. But going back, gosh, if I had seen that in the 3rd practice, I'd have made the change then. But you don't always know when it's going to happen. I feel great about the 2 guys that returned for us and knowing what I know about them. I feel excited about what I've learned of Phillip Sims, and I feel great about both of our incoming freshman quarterbacks. Of course, you all know Grayson because he was here in the spring, and Matt Johns joins us this summer. And we spent a lot of time recruiting those guys and felt like they were the right guys to come and continue to be the future of the quarterback position here, and I think we're in good shape.
You kind of gave us a thumbnail sketch of what you've seen, what you know of Sims, but can you give us some specifics about what you've seen on film that either makes you think I need to work with him on this particular aspect of mechanics or recognition or anything like that, or if there's something you really like?
Well, I'll tell you, the first time I was exposed to him, we were recruiting a wide receiver from his high school. So I had literally been here for less than a month when I watched the video of a wide receiver. And I asked the coach who recruits there, who is that quarterback? And literally, I mean, honestly, I had no idea, and I hadn't been in the high school recruiting scene for the state of Virginia, so I had no idea who anyone was. But that was honestly my question. So that was my first exposure to him. It kind of stood out on high school video. I have friends at the University of Alabama who coach there, so I've also had feedback from them. And then as far as his mechanics and such, I think you got to see him in person. I could make a whole bunch of ideas, but the first day I watch him and work with him, it might just all change. One of the things that's really critical, I think, when you're working with a quarterback, and it really helps when you're an NFL coach and you go and work out a quarterback, I think it's critical to try to determine how well he can be coached or how well he takes coaching. And so we would always try to take a guy we went and worked out and give him something to do that he didn't see him do on video. Hopefully something that was difficult. Maybe he did it wrong the first attempt, and then how easily can I get this guy to be corrected? You never know how a guy reacts until you're with him and you're giving him coaching and you're watching his body react and what kind of feedback he can get. But that's part of the fun of coaching. And we tell guys when we're recruiting them that to come here to be the quarterback, you really got to like football and like the details and want to work on becoming great at the details. And we would tell that to any position player, but I try to be real specific with the quarterbacks about that because I want guys who really want to work hard at getting great at their trade and being an expert in what they do. And that's my personality, and I always, in showing them who I am in recruiting, try to make sure that comes through, and then I think the right guys will be attracted to that.
Coach, one of the things that seems to have emerged with respect to Michael Rocco is kind of an evolution of his leadership, both on and off the field. Can you just talk about that aspect of him personally and how that's impacting your offense and the rest of the unit?
Well, I would expect this summer Michael probably took a great jump forward again in his leadership. But I don't know. I'm not there, but I would expect that happened. I think confidence is a really tricky thing because it's very hard to manufacture it. Usually, guys have to earn it. And that's kind of the way you get it. Some guys act like they have it, but then as soon as they play, their teammates see them play. And the number one factor to really give credibility to Michael and his leadership style is on-field performance. And then probably maybe just as equal to that is who he is every day, because that's what his teammates see. And that's where leadership comes from. Some guys are going to do it in a boisterous way. Some guys do it in a very quiet, determined way. But the reality is their teammates are watching you. Just like as a coach, it's hard to be someone you're not and then over time think that you're going to trick them. They're going to figure you out because they spend so much time around you. And Michael's teammates spend so much time with him. So they really get to know who he is and what he does when the coaches aren't watching. And then they watch him play on the field. And as I think they've seen him progress as a college player and they've seen him make plays to help us win games, and they're going to believe. And as long as his actions and words match each other, which, if in my opinion, they do with Michael, then why wouldn't you believe and want to follow him? So I'm really happy about that. I think as an offense, we have more leadership this year than we have had in the 2 years coming in, just from guys that I know that have been part of our system, guys that I, with my own eyes and ears, have been able to observe acting as a leader should act. And so I'm really excited about that. I remember when it was 2005 with the Washington Redskins, Coach Gibbs had really overturned the roster. We started the season really well, and we lost 3 games in a row and we're 5-6. From a team we were making a lot of headlines early in the year. We started 3-0, and then we had gotten to 5-3, and we had really turned everything around. Then all of a sudden we lost 3 games in a row to go to a losing record. And I can recall certain players on the practice field. One in particular, he was not even a starter. He was a longtime veteran. I can just remember the words he would say, the way he would say it on the practice field. And we ran off 5 straight victories and then won a playoff game. But it was the character of the players on the team, I thought, more than any other factor that changed that 3-game losing streak into a 6-game winning streak, and the leadership that they gave. And so that really makes me excited. And those kind of issues on a football team are really hard to put your finger on. There's no manual and we can teach them easily how to run a route. We can describe it on paper. When you start talking about leadership of an offensive unit, it's tricky because you can build it all different ways. And right now I feel really confident and excited because the different players, not only our captains, but so many individuals on our offense that are showing the fact that they're going to be leaders for us, and I think that's exciting.
How did last year's experience change or not change your thinking about a two-quarterback system? I think the first 6 games you made sure that David got meaningful minutes each game, then you switched, probably had a little bit more success. Could you see yourself doing that again at some point?
I could see myself being in a situation where you want to play more than one. It's not the most comfortable thing, but when it's the right thing for your team, you have to do it. And we clearly felt at times last year that we had to do it because it made us better. We felt like David had something to offer that had to play. We felt like not only would it help us produce offensively, but it would help develop him as a player. And if you remember, at the end of the 2010 season, we played Michael Rocco in games, in the first half of the games at the end of the year, to help him develop as a player. So I think you have to handle it on a case-by-case basis. I don't know what will happen. I don't have an opinion today because I don't have to, so I'll just let it play. I mean, it's hard enough when you have to decide. When you don't have to decide yet, just make a great plan of how you're going to get there and then evaluate as you go.
More effective when you went with one late in the season?
I think at times late, Doug, I think at times late in the season we were more effective. Whether that doesn't mean that was the reason. There were a lot of factors that go into it. And the decisions we made on playing time at the end of the season were what we thought was best at that moment. And that's what we're going to do. We just can, despite what we say, we will reserve the right to change our minds.
Three-quarterback system.
I've never tried that. Well, we kind of did. Actually, when I was at the Falcons and Michael Vick got hurt in 2003, we were flipping back between 2 QBs, Doug Johnson and Kurt Kittner, but we had signed a kick returner from Clemson. Woody Dantzler was on our roster, so he took some quarterback snaps in the goal line. So technically, we used 3 that year. And 1 year in Seattle, my first year in Seattle, we started Matt Hasselbeck, Seneca Wallace, and Charlie Fry all had to start games for us. So usually when it's happening like that, it's not good. It wasn't good.
We haven't heard of very many 5 quarterbacks being active on game day. What's your target for how many you have active, and then you plan to redshirt the others? Would you think of changing positions? What's your mindset on that?
When I've spoken with Grayson Lambert and Matt Johns, the 2 incoming freshmen, I reminded them that 2 years ago we did not redshirt Michael Rocco because we felt like the best thing for the team was that he had earned the backup spot, and then talking with him, he agreed he wanted to go in that direction. Last year, we did not redshirt true freshman David Watford because we felt like he was in the mix, not only to be the backup, but even, as Doug mentioned, to play at times. And in talking to him, he agreed that he wanted to go in that direction. So we did what was best for the team, and I told them, have complete confidence, we'll do what's best for the team, and we'll talk to you and decide and take into account what your feelings are. And there's no, for us, we're not a team that's always going to have a senior, junior, sophomore, freshman quarterback. Here's our one way to do it. We're going to do what's best, and you have to evaluate it. We'll be smart about not only winning this year with this team, not only what's best for each particular guy as far as future development versus ability to play now, but also what's best for the future of the program. And you just got to take those things into account. And 95% of the time, it's real clear. It plays itself out on if a guy should redshirt or not. And then those other 5%, you talk it out. 95%, I think it's clear. And we're just, I think hopefully they trust, based on what we've shown, that we'll make the right decisions. We didn't say, hey, just because you're a freshman, you got to sit. We said, hey, this is the best thing, and we're going to go that way. You know, As long as we're all having success, you know, it'll be, everyone will agree, most people will agree with what we decide.
How do you manage that, maybe even outside the quarterback position, to make sure you don't have factions forming on the team or whatever? I mean, it seemed like, you know, Michael was everybody's hero, you know, the leader. At the end of spring practice, everybody was raving about Michael. And there's guys, obviously, that played with Philip in high school and know of him, and he, you know, many credentials. How do you kind of manage the rest of the team to make sure it doesn't become a fractious thing?
Well, most importantly, Coach London's already done that with how he's built the team. I mean, it's not a one issue and then deal with it. It's the kind of thing that happens over a long period of time, with great decisions in recruiting and in the way that Coach treats the players every single day. So he's built a level of trust, and then I think everyone on the coaching staff, including the strength coaches, because you can't minimize the impact they have, especially over the summer. They talk about team, and they talk about leadership, and they talk about we're doing this together and holding each other responsible, and that just builds. And a lot of the guys maybe who don't fall in line with that remove themselves or leave, but the guys who are here that like by that feeling builds within them. And then some of the guys that maybe by themselves would be a little wishy-washy, they get pulled along, and then they get built up. And then you get to a point where you have a team that really cares about the team. And so then whether it's the left tackle or the quarterback, obviously the quarterback gets the most press, but when you get a situation where there's a competition, I saw a couple quotes from some of our guys who were asked who just talked about team. You know, we're going to do the best thing, or we trust the coaches, or they're all going to play, or they're helping each other. And you can only fake those things so many times. Eventually someone says it if it's really there, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. But it's not a quick fix of one issue. It's a long-term deal, and it's how you build the culture of a team, and Coach London's done a great job doing that.
Bill, you mentioned in the spring that you didn't feel like last year's point production matched the yardage. How has that impacted your off-season in terms of planning and research and stuff, just trying to find ways to tweak here and there to get more points?
It's a good question. I'm going to take a second to think about how much answer I'm going to give you. I think every year you have to evaluate who you have on your team, and constantly, not only as a year but week to week, we really spend a lot of time evaluating what is best for us to do. In some games you're going to go in and you're going to win 10-9, and some games you might have to win 35-31. I mean, there are all different ways to do it. But as we look at this year, I feel like we have more players that we know can contribute with the ball in their hand than we've had the last 2 years. Some of them you've seen on video, so if you made on game day, so if you made a list, you know, you'll have a longer list this year of guys you've actually seen carry the ball. Our number of running backs, receivers, we've got a bunch of tight ends who've played for us now who are back. So some of them, you know, and some of them we know because we've seen them do it on the practice field over and over. As a staff, we say, this guy's got to play. So as we look at how do you score more points, I mean, that's the essence of offense until the end of the game when you do what you have to win, whether it's kneeling on the ball or running the clock out. You just keep scoring until it's time to do otherwise with the clock. The more guys that can help you, I think the better chances you have. The onus comes on the coaches now on how do you get all those guys in the right situation. So I feel a real responsibility to make sure the ball gets in certain guys' hands a number of times. I think in football, as far as the positives, it's very hard to create long drives with all short plays. You got to have explosive plays. And for 2 years, we've kept track every week of how many explosive plays we have. And often that leads you to what your point production is going to be, because it's hard to have a 15-play drive. I mean, there aren't many in football. Almost every team in the country, if you look at their drive start, the further back they start, the harder it is to score. Well, the way you can help flip that is if you get a big chunk of yardage in there, whether it scores a touchdown or just turns the field. Now all of a sudden it's a shorter field. So we're always going to work hard to create explosive plays. Not that we didn't last year. We've tried to. I thought going into the bowl game, as we emphasized that, we got a little bit better at it in practice, and it showed up a little bit in the game, and so we'll continue to do that. I think you have to make great decisions just on the best scheme to run for each player. And some running backs run certain schemes better than others. And hopefully I'll do a better job of making sure the right guys are getting the right calls this year. And then I think you can't discount the play of your quarterback. And we'll keep getting better at quarterback, and it'll show.
Bill, you've got a lot of experience on your offensive line, particularly on the bookends. How does that help, with that whole scheme and help your young guys, young players?
Coming into today's meeting, I was thinking about the line and how fortunate we were last year. 5 guys were able to start all 13 games. I mean, that's really it's really a huge positive for an offense to do that, and it's not all that common. At the same time, we tried to play a lot of younger guys and get them experience. So coming into this year now, losing 2 starters, I think we feel like we have some guys that we know a little bit about. But I think the depth of the line is a little bit different than last year. I mean, we'll have to see how quickly these young guys that we like become college players now that we like, and only time will tell, just like with the quarterbacks. But at the line, I think it's more a matter of how many do we have ready to play. You can't assume you're going to be able to play just 5 all year. It just doesn't happen like it did last year very often. So I think, to me, I do feel good about those tackles based on performance on the field. I've seen them do it, and I believe in them as people, so I know they'll keep getting better. But now my question is, okay, fill the rest in. Luke Bowanko returns on the inside, and then I'll fill in who's going to start with him, and who's number 6, who's number 7, who's number 8, and you always assume you need a bunch of them to get through the season, and that'll be really critical for us to figure that out fast. But having the tackles in football today, you got to be able to block defensive ends in the passing game. And so I think that's number 1. And number 2, if you're big like we are, then hopefully you can actually gain an advantage in being bigger than people and knocking them off the football. Now you have guys who've been through a couple seasons, so I feel like not only do they know how to play the game, they've also really been taught extremely well how you prepare, how you study an opponent on video. And so now maybe you can throw it in their court a little bit, okay? Morgan and O'Day, now you're the vets, and you've played, you've blocked some pretty good defensive ends. Now you come to us on Monday, you study the film, tell us what his best pass rush move is. Tell us if you see a key in his stance and when he's going to take an inside stunt. And you start putting it on them a little bit, and hopefully they'll take the responsibility of teaching the younger guys how to prepare that way.
A guy who seldom gets talked about is Darius Jennings.
Yeah.
Where you see him going into this season? Is he the possession receiver, take a lot of his throw receptions, or is he more of a deep threat, or what do you see his role as?
To me, Darius, I mentioned earlier about the responsibility of the offensive coordinator to get the ball in certain guys' hands. And before training camp begins, I would say in my mind, he's one of the guys that I'm going to have to make sure gets the football in his hands. It's easier. It's always easier with the halfbacks because you can turn around and hand it to them or toss it to them, and they get the ball. But with the receivers, you sometimes have to work at getting them the ball, not only because you're relying on the decisions of the quarterbacks and the accuracy of the quarterbacks and the protection to be able to throw it to them, but if a guy becomes a very good player, the defense can do certain things to make it hard to throw it to him. So I feel like when you watch the Miami game, we threw 2 screens to Darius that he caught. The one, he scored a big touchdown. But to me, when you watch the first or second drive of the game, coming off the goal line, maybe it was the first drive of the game, we threw him a screen. That might have been the better run, actually, on his part, because he broke some tackles and got the ball out past the 20 for us on a quick little pass. And so when you watch him do those things, if you just try to remove yourself from the offense, sometimes I try in the offseason watching video, try to just give a real honest look at what I see. I say, gosh, I got to get that guy the ball. He's making plays against our ACC opponents, and I thought coming into last year, as smart as he is, as athletic as he is, there is a learning curve for a high school quarterback becoming a wide receiver, because everyone seems to have good hands when you're in the backyard and your girlfriend's throwing you the ball. 10 yards, you can catch it. I can catch it one-handed, you know, you can do all this stuff. But it's different now when you're running 20 yards down the field, the ball's thrown on time, and then it's in the air as your head turns, and you got to find it. And, oh, by the way, people might be bumping you on the way. It's just different, tracking the ball, doing it while you're running full speed, that your eye level is moving. And over time, guys learn to do that, and they don't notice it's moving, but when you're not used to it, it's hard. And so there was a learning curve, but he's the kind of learner, and he's so serious about football and being great that he made it look easy. We know it's not that easy. So now that he's gone through some of that transition, I'm excited to see what he can be next.